everyone. This is Elena Mosaner, and this is Mind Over Matter podcast. And today I'm going to be talking to Steve Axel, who is a professional certified coach by ICF International Coaching Federation, and he's the principal of Axel Coaching. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, Elena. Nice to be here.
Nice to be here too, and nice to meet you.
Thank you.
So, Steve, you and I, we have met online. We actually have met on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
It was very nice of you. You sent me a message some time ago, about a year ago, I think. You read an article, and then we started talking more. And I wanted to connect with you and talk more about coaching, about ICF, International Coaching Federation, also about your work and processes that you use, because we're both coaches. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about our practice and, understand how you work.
Sounds great.
So where are you right now?
So I'm in La Jolla, California, suburb of San Diego.
Mm-hmm. Is this where you are originally?
No, actually, I'm originally from Riverside, California.
So, but you're still Californian, right?
Yes.
Californian in your blood. So let's talk about coaching. And first of all, how did you become a coach, and what led you to become an ICF International Coaching Federation certified coach?
Sure. Well, actually, it's a very nonlinear story. I was an executive at Baxter International, and I was managing some acquisitions and integrations. And oddly enough, my division was divested. So my employment contract said that when I lost my job, I would get transition support. And so I went to work with a company in Chicago called Robertson Lostetter. And Robertson Lostetter is a boutique company that focuses on executive development, both from an executive coaching perspective and a transition perspective. So actually, I became a client, and my coach was the CEO, who happened to be a master certified coach by the International Coaching Federation. And so after about 6 months, I got all my training. I landed a variety of great jobs. I became the chief marketing officer for 3 different NASDAQ companies. And oddly enough, about 15 years later, they came back and actually solicited me as a full-time employee. And that's when I physically joined the company as a coach.
So you actually experienced being a coachee. That was your experience transitioning from one place
Correct.
to another place. And you have seen the positive results, obviously, from coaching. And then later on, 15 years later, you actually have become a coach. And what made you want to actually become a coach and not continue working?
Well, the last job I had, I was commuting back and forth to Israel. And from Chicago, it's about a 14-hour flight one way. After about 4 years of this, I decided it was time to kind of quit. So actually, I had resigned from my job, and that's when they actually asked me to join. And one of the key reasons I did join was I knew one of the people there really well. He was a very close friend of mine, and we'd worked together at Baxter. And I felt really comfortable working with him. And secondly, by this time, I had about 29 years of work experience. So sales, marketing, operations, profit and loss, even board work. And I thought, maybe I could take my experience and help others where they've had conflicts or challenges in their life. And so that's one of the reasons I joined their firm and became a coach.
I see. And you enjoy being a coach. You enjoy helping people become better versions of themselves and transition and resolve conflicts. You really enjoy being on that side. I can see that.
I think it's the best job ever.
Tell me why.
As long as I have a phone, or in this particular case, a Wi-Fi connection, I can coach anybody in the world. So I've coached people in transition at Microsoft in China. I've had clients in France and Germany. So you kind of name it. As long as I have a voice, I can coach.
It's really fascinating. I want to talk a little bit more about the whole concept of transition in a few minutes. But can we talk about ICF coaching versus non-ICF? Because we know there are many coaching schools and coaches out there who are not certified by ICF. What are your thoughts on that? Are they still, legit coaches? They still can do what they do. Do you have to be an ICF coach? Because there's a lot of conversation about that out there.
Yes, being an ICF certified coach, for me in particular, I think has major advantages. And the reason is I'm not an HR professional. And I think when you are an HR professional, and that historically has been where coaches come from, they have this background of working with companies and executives and helping them through their career. So they have kind of a natural affinity to coaching. Well, I didn't come up through HR. I came up through business. So for me, getting certified kind of signaled to people, not only does he have business experience, but now he's also a professionally trained and certified coach, which I think has helped me a lot.
Okay. Do other coaches who are not certified by ICF who are still working with organizations, like from HR?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it kind of depends. For example, let's say you're a CEO. Let's say you've been a CEO for multiple businesses. There's nothing to stop you from being a coach that helps onboard new CEOs. I mean, your track record and your experience already designates that you have some tangible value. The issue really comes down to the word coaching. Now, if you differentiate coaching from mentoring, so for example, I've been in situations where a new CEO had issues with the board that I was not capable of answering or helping him with. So I specifically found one or two CEOs who could mentor and say, in this kind of situation, for example, if you're going to do a takeover or an acquisition, here are the things you need to do with the board and from an SEC perspective to make sure it goes properly. So as a result, yes, anybody can be a coach. However, the word coaching really does personify, at least from ICF, a very specific protocol as to how you do it, the best way to do it, and most importantly, the things you're not supposed to do as a pure coach.
I totally agree with that. There's also about 11. I think they have more core competencies now, 12 maybe, right? There's some new competencies that have been added, and for me to become an ICF certified coach, it was not an easy process. It's not just a weekend school that you take and become a coach. And it's fascinating that what I really love about ICF standard coaching is that a really good coach really knows how to ask questions. And in reality, you'd be asking, the better you are, you'd be asking a fewer questions to help your client create a positive change or access a very specific type of insight. So what we are trained to do as ICF certified coaches is to believe that our clients have the resources, right, without us teaching or mentoring, because teaching is imparting knowledge, right? Mentoring is about providing your experience, right? Your experience and knowledge you've acquired through your experience, right? Teaching can be imparting knowledge that you have learned from books and theories. So what I love about pure coaching is that it's almost magical in a sense, that somehow you can access through your unconscious and your previous experience and connect the dots in a way that the knowledge and the insight becomes yours. In that sense, it makes our job easier, that we don't need to have specific type of knowledge. It's helpful, like in your line of work, you're working with executives, you work with big companies, right? It's helpful to have that knowledge. But in a sense, if you are a pure coach, you don't even have to have specific direct knowledge, right? Like you don't have to mentor. This is what I love about ICF standard coaching. What do you think about that?
Well, to expand on your magical moment, I'll share with you one of my clients of something that happened. So I was coaching a software executive who actually was a man, he was actually a developer. So he wrote code, but he was really good at it. So the company promoted him to now being a manager. So he was going to manage other people. And I was brought in because, first of all, he'd never managed people before. And also, normally in the technology world, it's very common to find a lot of ISTJs, or basically people who are more introverted, who are not as socially skilled, who are fabulous in technology and insights and thinking. But when it comes to creating a great leadership presence, they may not have had to work on that. That's not what brought them into the job. So I was coaching him, and I noticed every time he would come into my office, he would never use my name. Hey there, what's going on? And I was kind of beginning to think to myself, I wonder how often he does this to other people. So I said, okay, one of your homework assignments is to go to work. And I had been at his work, so I knew the office layout. And I said, when you're walking down the main corridor in the morning, how do you typically greet people? He said, well, as I walk down the main hallway, a lot of times I'll just kind of divert my eyes to the right or left, or just kind of keep walking, or I just I keep thinking what I was thinking about, but I don't necessarily acknowledge people. I said, okay, so your homework for the next week is, as you go down the hallway, I want you to look at the people in the eye and say good morning with their name. And he said, boy, it sounds like a strange homework assignment. I said, I know, just humor me, give it a shot. So he was game. He went and did it. And then the following week, he came back in. And before he could even ask about the homework, he said, you wouldn't believe what happened. I said, what? He said, as I spoke to people and mentioned their name, their eyes lit up, their face, they smiled. It's like they really appreciated me in a way that I'd never seen before. And he goes, I suddenly realized over the first 2 days that I had a shield up, and I was preventing people from actually seeing me. And I think this is actually affecting my marriage too. And so I spoke to it about my wife, and she's begun to realize I'm beginning to communicate better. So what turned out as a very simple homework assignment, something I could never have envisioned, caused him to see that he was having to drop his shield and be more personable.
That's interesting. So you are actually, you have given them the homework assignment, because from what I remember, and it's okay to do that, of course, from what I remember studying ICF coaching, is that you have to ask them what type of, how would you like to be held accountable, or what would you like to do to support this new insight? Like you asked him for a question that, how do you greet people, right? And he responded to you, I don't look in the eyes, I don't say their names. So, and then did you actually ask him, how would you like to change that? Or did you actually tell him that here's the idea, this is how you change it? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think, it was kind of probably toward the end of the coaching session. And it was just one of those intuition things that a coach typically uses, where you try and determine, is what I'm seeing affecting his ability to be a good manager? And as a result, and the other thing I think in coaching that I've learned is I never ask a question if I have the answer.
Yeah, that's very good.
So I don't want to, using your idea of, so what would you like to do about that, et cetera, that's presupposing there's a problem. And I'm trying to walk him toward a solution. But in this particular case, I wanted him to discover what was happening in this interaction, and did it have effect upon his ability to be a manager and succeed in his new role. And that's why, and what I do is I tell my clients, I never assign homework or something for you to do in between sessions if it's not intrinsically related to your job or your effectiveness or your success. Yeah. So I don't go home and have them read a chapter and give me a book report. Okay. Yeah. That's not it. So that's kind of how we came up with that.
That's great, Steve. And I support this idea that we, as professional ICF standard coaches, are not asking questions that presuppose certain answer, like if we're expecting certain answer, because and that's the difficult part. I remember when I started studying it, from coming from a hypnotherapy background for many years, where suggestions are natural, right? You give suggestions. In ICF, you ask questions, and it's important not to have something in your head where you expect them to have certain response to your question. So it's really important to how do you ask that kind of question? That is interesting, right? Where do you draw the question? Is it intuition, being so present and attuned to your client? What do you think about that? Where does that question come from? The good question, powerful question, as they call it in ICF.
There's a concept you as a therapist probably heard of. It's called clean language. So I use this concept of clean language, which is when a client talks or uses a metaphor or uses a particular word, what I do is I try and use that word in my question. So for example, someone says, wow, I'm really struggling with this. And I'd say, really, where's the struggle? Or what are you struggling with? So I'll try and use their word, because your mind does create a very specific picture, and it uses those words very specifically. So if you use a metaphor, I'm absolutely going to use that metaphor in my question so that it totally resonates with them. It ensures I heard them, I'm trying to understand what they're saying, and it enables them to kind of explore maybe that metaphor even further.
Yeah, but bottom lining or matching the language of your client.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about transitions, right?
Sure.
So what are people transitioning from? Do they know where they're transitioning to?
Not all the time. Now, there are a couple of ways to envision transitioning. So let's say you lost your job, okay? That's one potential career transition. And in that case, coaching takes on a different perspective than it does in an executive coaching, for example. Because in transition, people don't necessarily know how to write a perfect resume. They don't know how to optimize a LinkedIn profile. So in many cases, I go from a coach into a little bit of a teaching mode in transition coaching. Now, if you're in a corporation, you also have transitions, going from a manager to a director to vice president, VP, et cetera. One interesting transition was a senior director, executive director, who moved to a CEO. And I was looking at his business card, and his business card had CEO, comma, RPH, which stands for registered pharmacist. And so my question, just looking at that, I asked, what's important about being a registered pharmacist? Yeah. And he said, well, it's a key credential I achieved, et cetera, et cetera. What's more important, CEO or a registered pharmacist? He said, well, absolutely CEO. And I said, are there any consequences by maintaining the registered pharmacist? Now, I don't really know if there is or not. I mean, maybe their core audience is nothing but registered pharmacists. So I don't know. But I asked the question. And he said, I really have never thought about that. It sits on my desk every day. I look at it, I pass it out. I don't think twice about it. So for him, he really had never made a full transition to CEO. He still thought of himself as a pharmacist.
Wow, this is very interesting. It's really about holding on to who you are in your previous, let's say, chapter, right? You move on to the next one. You really have to discard so many things that you are, but it's just so hard, especially with such an important credential, being a PhD, a pharmacist. And it's your achievement, it's your many years of school, right? But to transition into something else, I can imagine. So what are some of the challenges that you feel people are experiencing when they are transitioning. So that's probably one of them, right? Holding on to your previous, achievements and credentials. What are some of the other things?
There's a great book, which I'm sure you've heard of, by Marshall Goldsmith, called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And that personifies exactly what's happening here. So for example, the software engineer I mentioned, what got him hired was his technical expertise. What was going to get him promoted? His soft skills. And everybody who goes through a career, you have different strengths and weaknesses at different points in your career. And sometimes those strengths elevate you to the next role. And sometimes your weaknesses hold you back from getting the next role. So that's where a coach comes in. And the beautiful part about being a coach compared to going to a leadership class is, in a leadership class, everything is cookie cutter. They have a very set agenda. Everybody gets the same thing. But in a coaching assignment, everything I do is completely customized. It's kind of like a buffet where I get to go and sample just certain parts of the buffet, but I don't have to have them eat the whole buffet.
Yeah.
And as a result, it's more time effective, it's more cost effective, and most importantly, it delivers better results. So I'd say every transition in your career emphasizes different skill sets, and a coach can help you accelerate your development in those new roles.
So it does look like coaching is a lot about transitioning. It's about growth, right? It is about forward movement, as we know. And what processes, I wanted to talk a little bit about your processes that you use. Any evidence-based models, like NLP, appreciative coaching, anything that you can share with us. And if you wanted to share something on screen, that's fine as well.
If you'd like to enable my screen sharing,
sure,
Elena, I'll go ahead and do that.
So I need to enable the screen sharing, right?
Yes.
Hold on. Let me share screen. So leave it. There you go. Wait, am I sharing my screen?
It's actually enabling my screen share.
Okay. So I've never done this. So I think I need to approve something, right?
So I think it's probably around the share screen, and it should have allow participants to share screen.
Okay. One participant, multiple participants can share. Okay, so maybe multiple.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've done that.
Okay, it worked.
Able.
So can you see my screen?
I see your screen.
Great. So this is a particular model I'm going to describe it for you. It's called the Wheel of Business.
Sure.
And the Wheel of Business, you picture a circle into various segments like a pie, and you can label each of those pie sections with an attribute. On this particular chart, we have interpersonal agility, technical expertise, strategic agility, sense of urgency, conflict management, etc. And what I do is I ask each participant at the beginning of a coaching assignment, particularly if we're not doing a 360, which I'll describe later, but this is one way to quickly get an idea of where they feel they're strong and where they might need some help. So for example, this will be on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 will be on the perimeter of the circle. And when you fill all it in, this is what it looks like. So if I looked at this particular individual, I would say, gee, I would like to, so which of these do you consider your least, the ones you'd like to work on the most? And they might say, well, I'm in a research and development position, so innovation is really important. That's kind of low.
Yeah.
I have not really done too much delegation before. And I don't feel I have the endorsement or support from my peers as I need to. Okay. So that could be a great place to start. And so I use this Wheel of Business with people who are not necessarily sure what they want to get out of coaching. In most cases, I will always first meet with the boss. So the boss will kind of tell me, hey, here are the areas I'd like you to work on with Bob, for example.
Yeah.
I will try and see if those are in sync with Bob, and or do this personal diagnostic and see what they think.
So these are skills / competencies, right?
Yes.
Where did you design that, or was it something?
No, actually, this
Yeah.
particular model came from Robertson Lostetter in Chicago.
Hmm.
However, there are multiple models just like this. Some use different labels. Some only maybe have 5 or 6 attributes. This, I think, has like 12 or 15. So you can do it as detailed or as minimalistic as you'd like.
These are fascinating. Some of those things, I think our audience may not know some of them, but they're quite interesting. How would you, what is interpersonal agility? How would you define that?
Yeah, so interpersonal agility is the ability to interact with anybody at their particular level. So it's kind of an attribute of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
It's knowing yourself, it's knowing how you come across to others, and most importantly, what's most important in synchronizing with those with their personality.
Mm-hmm.
Another key tool I use,
Yeah.
and it looks like this is a little cattywampus. It's from a book called For Your, and I don't think I can easily switch that. It's called For Your Improvement, FYI. Have you ever heard of that, Elena?
No.
Okay, so FYI is a book, and if you turn your head sideways, you can read it very easily. So what it does is it diagnoses and this particular attribute is learning on the fly. So if I had an executive who has a huge amount of information that they have to learn.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you for a second. Is it possible to reverse it centered, or is it?
Could be tough.
Could be tough.
Let me.
And by the way, I'll be cutting those parts where we're just adjusting things. So.
Yeah, I think I can't actually easily do it right now.
Okay.
So I'll just kind of mention it.
Okay, that's fine.
But the FYI book, anybody can buy it. It's kind of expensive, but it is fabulous. And I'd say almost every HR person has used it at one time or another. So it talks about if you're unskilled in an attribute, if you're skilled, or maybe you're even using that skill too much or overusing a strength. And then for 2 or 3 pages, it'll give you great ideas about things you can do differently to become more effective in your role. So it's a really wonderful book.
Fascinating.
And I'll show you another tool I use. This is called the Priority Matrix. It's readily available on the web. And the thing I found through my coaching, and particularly in the last 24 months, particularly through the pandemic, is everybody's being asked to do more in a shorter period of time. So what's happening is the stress is really increasing at the corporate level, at the executive level. Sometimes they're short on staff. They've not been able to hire all the people they want. So as a result, time management, or really priority management, becomes really, really critical. I just used this with a chief scientific officer who was having a lot of trouble going from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then had calls to China. So he had to stay up till like 10 o'clock at night, et cetera. And as a result, we had to make sure his schedule during the day was as effective as possible. So in this priority matrix, the left axis, or the y-axis, is the importance. The x-axis, or the bottom axis, is urgency. And so wherever possible, if you can eliminate tasks, and by the way, this means eliminating meetings that you don't need to go to. This particular executive we looked at his calendar, and I believe we had about 75% of his week was in meetings. 75%. So the first question I asked was, which of those meetings do you not contribute? Or which of those meetings do you think you could avoid going to? And as a result, he ended up freeing 6.5 hours a week that he could then do more important priority things too. The delegation, for him, in this particular case, he was actually missing a lieutenant on his staff.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to delegate, he had to put more time on him, on hiring his kind of chief of staff so he could delegate more.
Yeah.
Then he also created his do. What are the things I absolutely have to do?
Mm-hmm.
I've got an upcoming presentation to analysts, et cetera. And then maybe things maybe not as urgent, schedule later. So simple things like this become key for really busy executives.
True. Why do you think people don't see that? Because it seems so clear that there are things that you would want to eliminate where you're not participating. Why do you think there's a point where people do too much or use certain skill that is, overuse the skill or overdo things? Why do you think there's such kind of like a blindness in a sense? Why do you think that happens?
Yeah, there is a blindness in a sense. And I asked this particular executive, why do you feel, or how did your calendar get the way it got?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I don't want to let people down.
Oh, interesting.
And I don't want to fail. And I feel like I have to give everybody what they need. So then the key question came in, are you compromising yourself by giving everything to everybody else?
And probably yes, right?
And that was kind of I said, just think about the question, come back next week. And he said, I've absolutely been putting other people's needs ahead of my own.
Mm-hmm.
And if I keep doing that, I will fail in my role.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's when he started restructuring. So you're right. Some of this seems very simple and easy, but when you're in the middle of the tornado, okay, although it seems calm, there's all these whirlwinds around you. And here again, it's very tough sometimes to see outside the tornado when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. And it does seem like there's some sort of assertiveness required, right? To get to the next stage where you either eliminate or delegate better or hire someone else or, schedule things differently. There's some sort of boldness and assertiveness that is required within yourself, right? To help you achieve that.
Yes. And in this particular individual, he had never been at the sea level before. So he was used to taking direction. He was used to kind of following along the path. And now as a C-level executive, he had to create the path. So here again, it's a different skill set. And it's been a pleasure and a delight working with him because I see him adopting new practices and ways of doing things and making his schedule much more workable. And now he's working out more. He's got less stress. Things are easier at home. So here again, I'm seeing, and most importantly, he's seeing the benefits of coaching.
And how's he seeing his people that he's delegating to and people that he thought he would let down? How are they reacting?
Well, delegation, there's another really word for delegation. It's development. Because when you
I'm sorry, you broke up. Development?
Development.
Yeah.
So when you delegate something, you are basically giving someone else the chance to do something.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up delegating, a lot more to his administrative assistant. And at first he was reticent because he thought she was really busy. Well, when he delegated, he found her really excited because she was learning new skills. And as a result, he was really impressed with her enthusiasm and excitement for doing simple, learning how to do more things on Excel, for example. So the delegation, some people think, oh, they're really busy, I can't overburden them. But at the end of the day, what they're really doing is they're compromising those individuals from learning more, developing new skills, or trying new things.
Yeah, it's all how you look at it. I can see it how in reality you're helping people learn more, grow more, and develop more. So you're actually expanding your surrounding, your circle of work and influence.
Exactly. And the other part of that, Elena, which you know really well, is our role as a coach is to expand or to maybe change their perception. For example, they can look at something as a problem, or they can look at it as an opportunity. It sounds kind of trite, but I'll tell you, it makes a huge difference. Or, for example, a speaking engagement. You know, a lot of people are really frightened of speaking and getting in front of a big group.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the other side of it is that most often when you're picked to speak, you know more about that subject than anybody.
Yeah.
Or if it's about you, nobody knows you more than you. So in essence, there's really nobody else who could do the presentation. So there's a lot of techniques to kind of shift perspective. And I think that's a core skill that coaches should have.
I agree. I agree. So that's the priority matrix. That's good to know.
And I'll show you a really nice tool that you may or may not be familiar with. This is called the Thomas Kuhlman conflict mode instrument.
Mm-hmm.
When I go into a corporation, I can be guaranteed of one thing: there is conflict. You know, I don't care whether it's time, resources, personalities, politics, you name it, there's conflict. So
Yeah.
this particular instrument is very easy to take. It probably takes about 12 minutes. And on the left axis, we have assertiveness, to bring up your point earlier,
Mm-hmm.
about how assertive you're going to be in conflict. And the bottom index is cooperativeness. So how cooperative are you in the conflict, or how assertive or not assertive you are? And so essence, when you take the test, you will see how you score on these 5 areas. So the 5 areas are collaborating, compromising, competing, accommodating, or avoiding.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take avoiding conflict, okay? If you're sitting in your office and your staff you can hear they're in some kind of argument or disagreement, and you know there's a conflict going on, you have 2 choices. You can go out and say, hey, what's going on? How can I help? Okay, so you intervene.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you avoid the conflict. And you avoid the conflict. The benefit is you see how easily your team can rectify the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So can they resolve the conflict on their own? So sometimes avoiding conflict is actually a very good strategy.
Mm.
But the majority of clients I coach, the number one way they resolve conflict is competing.
What is that?
So competing is basically I win and you lose, or you win the agreement and I lose.
Yeah.
It's an all or nothing. And the problem with competing is if you're really, really good at competing, you create a lot of enemies, or a lot of people who don't enjoy working with you. Now, the interesting thing is you can change the competing style into collaborating in a heartbeat.
How do you do that?
And the way you do that is you go to a whiteboard. Because when let's say you're on one side of the desk, I'm on the other side of the desk. It's kind of like singles in tennis. I'm trying to shoot a point to win it. You're trying to shoot a point against me to win it.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment we both turn to a whiteboard, it's like we're playing doubles. Now we're on the same side of the net. And as a result, the problem is over there. The problem is not in between us. So if you go into operations executives or IT executives, you'll always see a whiteboard, because there are always challenges, either logistic or infrastructure, that have to be resolved. And that's why I love a whiteboard, because it enables you to set the problem over there, and you can both collaborate on how to fix that problem. That's
more or less my style in resolving problems, is collaborating and looking at a problem and see multiple perspectives, you know.
And the only issue with collaborating, though, Elena, is it takes a lot more, and this assertiveness could also be called energy. So it takes a lot more energy, takes a little bit more time to be collaborative.
Yeah.
And that time to be cooperative. So as a result, it's really a commitment on yourself to really make that happen.
I see. So it does take energy, yeah.
But it is the only win-win solution. Competing is a win-lose. Compromising, you're giving up something.
Yeah.
Accommodating, you're giving up something, and avoiding, well, you're not taking any responsibility for the issue. So you're kind of giving that up.
So
So
pretty
the only win-win is the collaborating.
collaborating is the one to, but it does take focus and energy, and your ability to really listen and connect with another, right?
Correct.
I think it does take a lot of effort, and as coaches, that's pretty much what we do, right? That's how they often talk about having coaching culture and teaching coaching culture in organizations, because that allows you to build rapport with others, especially for leaders and executives, so that you can hear the other person's perspective as opposed to prove yours, compete, or compromise is an interesting one. Compromising is it's where you're giving up your perspective pretty much, right? So
yeah, actually compromising and accommodating, and I always ask my clients, what's the definition of the two? Compromising is where you give up something and they give up something. Now, accommodating is a little bit softer. It is, you give up something, but it means nothing to you. So if one of my employees has a desk close to the window and they say, hey, I'd like to move my desk closer to the window because I have a plant on my desk, okay? So I can accommodate them and say, sure, but it means nothing to me because I don't care where the desk is located. But to them, it has value. So accommodating is actually a very good strategy if you can figure out what they want, but it really means nothing to you.
So it's okay to use that.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes, right?
These are all great strategies, and in each market, in each situation, each one might be relevant.
How do you know which one to use and when? That's the question.
I'd say in the majority of cases, you can't go wrong with collaborating. However, if you're dealing with an outside vendor and they have proposed $1 million contract and you feel it should be no more than 900,000, you need to go into competing mode to make sure you get what's in your best interest or the company's best interest. Compromising, if you're in a really high stakes situation and you need to come to a resolution quickly, compromising may be the absolute best alternative. So depending upon the situation, each of these are relevant, and over time and experience, you begin to realize what is the right element for conflict. And that's why I like using these 5 elements, because now people just don't think of conflict. They think of, oh, I have 5 different ways to deal with it.
Yeah, you never want to walk out of conflict feeling either depleted or that you overcompromised, right? You want to have it, almost like it feels like you want to have some sort of justice at the end, or some sort of feeling of either justice or that you did the right thing, right? Yeah, I think to me it's very intuitive. Like when I look at these things, it's really about having a feeling at the end of completing that or resolving a conflict where I know, okay, even if I compromised or even if I accommodated in this moment, or even when I avoided it, I feel good, I feel comfortable, that was the right strategy. Maybe something can tell you whether it's feeling in your body or a sense of content that you did the right thing, as opposed to feeling guilty or let down or depleted, something like that. What do you think about that? Is there something in the end that can tell you that you did the right thing?
I think to your point, it's really just a self-evaluation. For a lot of clients, I tell them or ask them, do you feel that you're learning, that you're effectively reviewing and learning as you go along in your career? And if they say no, I might say, well, what are some of the ways you feel you might be able to become better at that? And when we're going through options exploration, and I'll have to mention the word advice, okay? Because it's always a key part when you talk about coaching. You don't want to necessarily say, here's what you should do, okay? But I will provide options and say, well, let me propose if you'd be interested, or would you be interested if I present a solution that other clients have used? And if they say yes, I'd say, well, what some clients like to do is on a Friday afternoon, they review all the key decisions they made during the prior week. And they try and look and see, how did that solution come out?
Mhm.
Could I have done it better? Or did I get accomplished what I want to get accomplished this week? So for the following week, they then redesign what they're going to do based upon what they did the prior week. And you can do it on a Friday, you can do it on a Monday. But what it does, it helps you to reprioritize where you need to be better and or just streamline what you've done already.
There is a place for advice. There is a place for advice for us as coaches. And as you pointed out, you asked the question, would you like me to tell you what some of my other clients are doing, right?
Right.
Excuse me. Okay, so we're gonna, and so the share screen is ended. Okay. Well, this is all very, very useful. How's the pandemic affected your work, by the way?
I know it's been really difficult for so many people, but from my perspective as a coach, I actually had a record year last year. And I think the reason is that there were some very unusual situations that executives were faced with, a lot of complexity, a lot of ambiguity. And as a result, the corporations reached out and engaged me more. And the second part is I do have two sides of my practice. One's executive coaching and one is transition coaching. So if you lose your job, which happened a little bit during the pandemic, I help you. Or if you're in a corporate setting or taking a new role or a bigger role, then I help you there. So the pandemic also, I will tell you, radically affected my in-person engagements. So now I'm pretty much 100% virtual, which is great because I can actually schedule more clients during the day. And actually, it's easier for them because they don't have to go down to reception, pick me up at security, take me back to their office, then walk me back to security. I mean, it really is a time saver and a productivity enhancement.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it is a time saver and you're still producing the same results, right? Working on the phone or over Zoom, and more interestingly, people are much more accepting of doing phone or Zoom sessions. Most of my clients are coming from New York City, and before the pandemic, people did want to come into an office, and now there's much more acceptance, even for practices like hypnosis, where people just have an idea of being in an office, being in a chair. In reality, for hypnosis, part of the session, your eyes are closed anyway, so you don't need to be seeing me. So phone is just enough. And I always tell my clients that we are hypnotized by television, by social media, things that you're looking at, your screens, and so on and so forth. I really enjoyed our conversation, and it looks like you're doing really incredible work working with transition coaching, executive coaching. It is amazing that you have a background. Also, you said marketing background you had in the past, right? Marketing, business, acquisitions. It probably helps you talk to your clients because they really trust your expertise and background, and that you are a coach who's already experienced, and you are a PCC, which means you've worked with at least 500 hours, right? We know that to be a professional certified coach, you have to have at least 500 hours. I'm sure you have more, and you probably can go for the MCC, right? Are you going to go for the master certification?
It's funny. I think about it all the time, but I've decided, because I do have over 2,500 hours of coaching. I've talked to a lot of people who have tried to get the MCC, and it's consistently, they never get it the first time. They may get it the second time, or they may get it the third time. And so I've really been so busy with my practice that I've really not focused on getting the MCC. And the most important part is it hasn't held me back, because I do have that certification from a major body. And as you mentioned, very stringent requirements to get certified by them.
Yeah.
So as a result, I feel very comfortable that even with the PCC, it'll more than enable my practice.
Yeah, it's a good certification. I've been listening to some coaching sessions from Russia. It's actually getting very popular in Russia. And I really admire how Russian coaches are really good in following all the core competencies, and maybe
Mm,
that's part of the Russian mentality to really follow things and the rules because of how
mhm.
of the Soviet Union, and what's
Yeah.
in our mentalities to really be strict, and
Mhm.
what education is very strict, you have to follow things. So they're really really good. They are so good at listening and asking the questions, and it's really really amazing. So thank you for your time. Thank you for coming to talk to me today at my Mind Over Matter podcast. I really appreciate that.
I appreciate it, Elena. It was really wonderful talking with you.